Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Um, so it's like the first part of this little series I've made, part one. Go back to part one. If you want to look a little more information about that, I am Pierre Poilievre's half sister, and I'm not bragging about that. I'm not necessarily proud of that. I'm not necessarily wanting to speak about what I know about that situation, but what I do know is that's the truth. That's the truth about who I am, and that's the truth about where I'm from, and that's the truth about what the situation is. Um, People who don't understand kind of what my position is in his experience, I don't really have one. I don't really have a position in his experience. I have been more of a project for him and his collective of individuals he works with and his affiliates than I'm comfortable with. Um, in my experience, due to my education, I have in my background, I have some pretty specific knowledge and experiences that are necessary for his platform and necessary for him to do the work he's currently focusing on doing, which has been focusing on doing for some time. Um, at this point, I'm aware that my position within this work that him and his affiliates doing is well, it was against my wellness. It was against my health and my future because it relied on me to be solely drug dependent and solely medically recovery dependent. I've been so my whole life. I've been recovering from things I've experienced as a child due to the adoption that I went through, and it was not always the best place for me to be. It wasn't always the safest place for me to be in the position I was in, and the position that I'm in currently has to do with that. It has to do with what I went through, and has to do with we didn't go through the same thing. We weren't brought up in the same environment. So he may not be aware. I don't know what he's fully aware of when it comes to those people that raised me, but he may not be aware of the circumstances of my adoption even fully. He might not be. I'm not fully aware of his either, but he might not be fully aware of the circumstances of my life at younger years or at adolescence or now because I don't be in collaboration with him. I don't be in cooperation with him in any way that I'm willing to be because his position takes my freedom and my decision making and puts it at jeopardy. It puts it at risk, and it puts me at risk of a lack of health and a lack of available services for me that I need. Um, it would rely upon me, this position would rely upon me, like I said, being solely dependent. Uh, I am in receipt of social services at this point in my life, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's not a shameful thing. Unfortunately, believing that has got me in a really crap position a lot socially, believing that I am like below emotionally, below mentally, like below capacity. Uh, Only because of my experience and only because of where I've been can I kind of ever say that I understand my position now to be like the best position I could be in personally and a health position for myself and for my career going forward, which is I'm changing directions in my career, and I've been changing directions in my perception of my abilities to live a good life as such, away from the influences of his immediate perception of me or my abilities. And I don't really know, like I said, personally, what his belief systems are about that. I don't really know if that's something I want to know. But what I do know is that there has been, because of his affiliations and because of his professional direction, and because of the choices that the familial system has made or has made about me and had made about me against my at the time ability to choose because I was younger. I was below the age of 14 at the time these decisions were being made. So My question, my involvement wouldn't have been taken. There wouldn't have been any involvement that I had in that. Um, so basically, I would have to lie. Like this is where what I'm saying. Like I'm using the way I'm using the words in a nice way of talking, and I don't always do that. But basically, at this point, in order for his plan to work for me, for his plans for uh like addiction recovery to work for me, I would have to be, like I said, solely dependent on that and solely dependent upon other people to do things for me that I can do for myself. I do need assistance with some things, or I like to have people do things for me I don't need to do. Like who doesn't who wants to go grocery shopping when I can pay somebody to grocery shopping for me, right? Like who needs to worry about getting groceries when I could just offer someone, oh here, you know what I mean? I'll order it and you can just exactly then they can do what they need to do. Basically, it would require me, like, I think, believing a story about myself from a long time ago that was told to me as part of my like initial addiction recovery process, which was 12 step, and also had to do with the education I took. And it doesn't make sense anymore that I would need that. It doesn't make sense anymore. I would require that sort of heavy interference in my life. I have no dependents. I have no children. I'm single. Um, like I said, I do have needs, but that's the kind of thing where not everybody in the world can afford expensive things. I mean, some people require, like I said, some people require assistance. I am living in housing, which is an interesting perspective. Uh, I don't like how much involvement I really realize has happened, how much interference his experience had on mine to the point where I feel uncomfortable talking about it, uncomfortable speaking about it, and seeking help is impossible. I've been isolated um, because of it, and I wasn't aware of that, and I lost opportunities because of that, and I wasn't aware of it. I've been treated pretty shitty because of being his sister and not knowing it. Him being involved in my life in like a really weird, like big brother way, like actually big brother. Like it feels weird, but it is like that's what it's like. That's what it's like. Is Big Brother's watching you? That's literally what it's like. That's how I feel. I don't always appreciate that. No, I don't always appreciate that. So basically, I'm not trying to shit on his platform or shit on his ideas or tell anybody what I believe about him and his ideas about whatever. I just know that for me, being such an important part of this pilot project, being born in BC, being come here, being brought here, being trafficked here, and had been trafficked a lot as part of his plan, also to keep me dependent, so I would need it. Um, yeah, it doesn't make any sense anymore that this would be necessary. There's supposed to be an addictions treatment center being built outside, like right near where I live, and that was part. If you listen to one of his recent talks, is part of what he's still trying to do. What part of what he's still trying to do, and I don't believe it's gonna work. Like I've been educated in holistic wellness, and I've known a lot of people who've been in recovery and who've been working with people in recovery and who are just educated enough to know about what addiction really means. And what it really means, it's a lack of personal connection, less a lack of community connection. It's more of a lack of connection to one's spiritual essence, one's self. And uh, my experience with the recovery was more just I was smoking weed and hanging out with people who were doing other drugs, and I was getting into other drugs, and I wasn't completely in, but I was too close to it. I was too close to the scene. I was too close to these individuals who had these things available. I don't particularly like Trudeau's idea about um, criminalizing these drugs either. I don't know about completely making them illegal, and I don't know about completely limiting access to them. I don't want to go there with that. What I say is what I know about recovery is it has to do with an inside self awareness and an inside self perspective, which I got with a lot of the things I did um, as part of my own spiritual recovery. Um, Medical recovery doesn't always cover the aspect of self forgiveness or self acceptance or acceptance of other people and what other people do and what other people will continue to do, even if I'm aware of it or even if anyone's aware of it, what these individuals or people who do stuff as part of the larger family network of attempted sobriety, attempt to be in recovery, attempt to um, create a safer environment for children or a safer environment for people who are threatened by people's use of drugs, things like that. Well, yeah, like what I do know is that his policies are missing me at this point. And I don't be addressing him personally right here. But what I'm saying is if this is the direction our communities are going to go in, if we're going to go in this direction where people are going to be too afraid to go to parks just in case someone could say that they're doing drugs and they're not, and could chase them around, could bring their kids around and start chasing them in and out of places without even a notice as to what's going on. Um, People should be too afraid to walk down the street just in case the treatment center is really going to go up. This become a bit of a third party issue. Actually, a way more than a bit of a third party issue. I believe there's some not so good stuff going on financially. I can't prove this, but I believe there's some not so legal things going on financially. And I believe there's some sort of favoritism that can be happening or ideas and deals that are made years ago that don't really have like a proof of this will work. Say say we're all upset about the pilot project that's supposed to make it easier for drug addicts to get drugs. What about the part of the project where people get basically locked into their community, basically formed on the street, like they're just on the street, just living. Say they're walking up and down the street. Say they live on the or they live anywhere else. They're basically formed within their community. This is the community treatment aspect that I'm not so okay with. People are formed within their community, within their sick, narcissistic family structure. And if anybody knows anything about familial roles and familial um, collaborations and whatnot, even the way organizations with narcissistic structures run, it's basically you don't escape until you climb like the ladder. Like you have to work your way up to the top of the top of the top of the top of the top. And even then, once you're at the top of the top of the top of the top, you still don't get to escape. You just have to control the world around you. That's still addiction, and that's still a lack of a personal sense of self acceptance, self forgiveness, and real spiritual recovery. That's the most important thing from my perspective of recovery is it requires a person to understand other people's motivations come from a place of loss and self unforgiveness and fear. And a fear of realities becoming too intense and realities becoming too scary. People just want to kind of tune it out, kind of put people in places and in positions where they can't function and where they'll never be able to fully collaborate with society ever. In the position I'm in currently, in the position I'm in my life currently, I'm looking forward to changing my career to something more lucrative and more satisfying personally, where I can use my my strength. I pretty I've had a couple of run-ins with some pretty nasty individuals that turned out to be pretty dangerous that I dealt with them correctly. And I don't have any fear of defending myself at this point in my life physically. I don't have any fear of having to deal with individuals who want to have an issue. Although I know how to navigate the system, and I know when I see myself in a position of authority here, wherever here is for me, I think I'll take it for what it is. And I won't have to worry about any outside collaborations unnecessary for my wellness to say I don't be part of this. Like I said, part of this plan to work is for me to not be able to consent to treatment or a lack of treatment, to not be able to make those decisions for myself. And that would mean by proxy, any children that I would have the same issue, which is exactly the problem that we're dealing with, is these people who aren't legally able to represent themselves having children who aren't legally able to defend their parents, who aren't legally able to defend anything, and who are going to end up pretty much right away formed. And that's actually the problem. That's actually the issue because of the familial experience with adoption. To put him in the position of authority over me because he's older than me and he's a man and he has more connections than me, more financial, whatever, just more financial situations going than me. And that at this point is untenable, and I refuse to accept it. And I think I'll just leave it there. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out, and I'll try to kind of continue to upload a little bit more about the connections and collaborations I'm aware of, but like also the familial context that we're in, and that everyone has to learn how to deal with it for what it is instead of what is financially beneficial for some. All right, take care.